Welcome to another episode of Boxing Report, episode 208. For those who are long listeners of Pound Boxing Report, I'm your host, Michael, by the way. At least once a year, I try to do a show with all women, including all women, only all women, FLO for ladies only. Tonight is that night. I was going to plan to do it last week. Things didn't get done. So we're having it tonight. Ladies Love Boxing, round four. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News. Also join us, Francis from Full Boxing News, Jessica Fernandez of Black Sports Online, and Miss Fight Lady from Twitter. What's going on, ladies? What's going on?
It's great to be
Hello.
here. Took us so long to get together.
Sure did. 30 minutes.
30 minutes in a couple of weeks and months.
Yes.
So folks, enjoy it while you can.
Indeed. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show / podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. No matter what is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to. p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the right of the page. You will find links to our pages and channels on Facebook, G Plus, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr. Also find links to where to listen to the show: SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Player FM for the folks in the UK, Stitcher Radio, as well as Mixcloud. Let's get the show going. Going back a couple of Saturdays, since this is Ladies Love Boxing episode, let's start with a women's fight. Going back a couple of Saturdays, uh, Cecilia Braekhus, many feel is the number one woman fighter in the sport, pound for pound. She made, well, not technically her U.S. debut, but it was a historic fight because it was HBO's first time airing a fight, a women's bout on the undercard of Gennady Golovkin, Vanes Monterosen at the StubHub. Um, Braekhus, she fought Kayleerias, who former champion at middleweight. She came down to welterweight for this fight to fight Braekhus. And I must say, ladies, Braekhus, number one pound for pound, but Miss Reis gave her a dogfight all night long. I felt Braekhus won, but there was a couple of times where Braekhus got hurt, even knocked down, I think in round 5 or 6. But she closed the deal with a really strong 10th round. Closed the show that solidified the victory. In my opinion, excuse me. I'll go to you. I'll go to you, Erica, since you're not going to be able to be here on the show for long. Going back a couple of weeks, having basically 2 Saturdays to digest what went down, what you saw. Your impressions of the Reis fight with Cecilia Braekhus.
I think I could definitely quote a writer. I saw his article a couple of weeks ago, but I do not remember where it came from. But I think she's just such an amazing and a tough fighter. And she definitely gave us a run for our money. And I think I was much more happy at the fact that it kind of televised women's bout because, like you said, I think it's much bigger than that because even when you go to the Barclays Center for boxing, that's not even televised at all on Showtime. So I think we need to look at the bigger picture beyond who won the fight. This is a bigger victory for women in sports.
I'll go to you, Miss Fight Lady. Your thoughts on the action. How much trouble did you feel that Braekhus was in when she got knocked down and when she got hurt later in the middle to later rounds of the fight?
Well, I will be completely honest. I didn't get to watch the fight. The fight watched me. And what got me up was when she went down. I really thought that she was in trouble early in the fight. I know that, it was a really good showing for HBO. We got a few things we have to tweak. It was a long time coming, but at the same time, for this to be their pro debut for women, I think it was a pretty good start, and it was an exciting fight from start to finish. That I will give the ladies their props for in HBO. It was a really good selection for a pro debut for the ladies. That I can say, in my honest opinion.
I'll go to you, Francis. Throughout camp, Braekhus was trained by Lucia Riker. But basically a day before the bout, she switched trainers and went to Jonathan Banks. Very odd move in this sport, particularly at this level. How much do you think that played into her performance, or uh, did we all just sleep on Kayleerias and how good she was, and the fact that she was the bigger, stronger fighter?
Well, I was definitely surprised that Jonathan Banks kind of came in as this last minute trainer. I know that he had flown to California that morning to be at the fight. So I was very surprised by that, considering that Braekhus had already been training with Lucia Riker for 2 months. So I think that Kayleerias looked amazing in there. I know that she has a Native American name called Makunanog, I believe, and it's called Many Talents and Many Feathers. I guess that's the translation of it. And I felt that she really put on a good show for herself, really came at Cecilia Braekhus. And if the rounds had been longer than 2 minutes, I believe that she could have easily finished Braekhus at the end of the 8th round, especially with the knockdown. She came in very aggressively, very hungry. And I thought that the fight was actually much closer than what the cards had shown at the end of the fight. So, honestly, I thought the fight was much closer. And if Cyborg really wants to take on Cecilia Braekhus, I think that Braekhus is going to be in for a real awakening, because I saw Chris Cyborg take on Holly Holm that one time in the UFC, and I thought she looked amazing. Sorry, I know we're not talking about Cyborg, but as a boxer, she looked pretty good. So Braekhus, while it was a very impressive HBO debut for her, I think she has some things to work on, and I think that Kayleerias, she should, hats off to her. She had an amazing display of aggression, tenacity in her boxing, and if there were to be a rematch, I would definitely want to see it.
I'll go to you, Gail. Francis kind of touched within her synopsis, kind of touched on where I want to go to you in terms of this question here. She mentioned that if the rounds had been a little bit longer, you've been a long advocate in women's boxing for 3-minute rounds as opposed to 2-minute rounds, what we see now. Dare I say, Gail, if the women's bout were 3 minutes round, if the rounds were 3 minutes long, excuse me, not only would it Braekhus, who got knocked down and she was hurt a couple of times, I think personally she may have been in pretty serious jeopardy of getting knocked out, particularly in the rounds that she got knocked down in at the end. I think it was another round where she got hurt badly towards the middle end portion of the fight. Your thoughts about that, Gail?
Michael, I absolutely firmly believe the women should fight 3-minute rounds just like the men. Women don't run a shorter marathon distance. Women don't play a shorter set in tennis. And they're perfectly capable of going all the way, the same limits as the men. In many states in the United States, under certain athletic commissions, I believe New Jersey being one of them, New York, they do fight 3-minute rounds. Actually, they can fight 3-minute rounds in Nevada as well. And they need to do that for a variety of reasons. Number one, they need to be on that same platform to be taken seriously by a lot of the boxing world who's used to seeing the men. Second, it would increase the knockout percentage, which for women is low for a couple of reasons. Number one, women's weight divisions are exactly the same as men. So when you say a woman's welterweight champion, they're 147, just like the men. And that's where Braekhus and Kayleerias fall. But they do not have the same muscle mass percentage, no matter how low their body fat gets, as the men. They simply cannot marshal and develop that kind of muscle. So they're never going to have the one punching power of the men. But they would score a lot more knockouts and a lot more TKO type knockouts if they had that extra minute to work on. And this fight is the perfect example. There were 2 knockdowns in the fight, both by Reis on Braekhus. The first one was a flash knockdown, and if Braekhus's reflexes weren't so good, she would have been down all the way. But it was a flash knockdown. Her knees buckled. She caught herself, but her glove touched the canvas just barely, and she got an 8 count. The second time, 2 rounds later, in the 8th round of a 10-round fight, she got rocked hard with a straight right. Kayleerias has a great right hand, and she was in trouble, but it was nearly at the bell of 2 minutes. 1 more minute left, and we would have heard "and the new" at the end of that fight. Now, I was there ringside covering the fight, and the crowd absolutely thought Reis won the fight. We thought we were going to see all 5 belts change hands, the only unified, undisputed champion in all boxing turn her belts over all at once, and it didn't happen. There was one card that was 97-92. That was far too wide. That's a crazy score, considering you had a knockdown. And pardon me, the second was the 8th round punch was not a knockdown, but Braekhus was in big trouble. She should have been down. She bounced against the ropes. She's very lucky the punch took place against the ropes where she was. She lucked out. And being the veteran she is, she immediately clenched onto Reis and held on for dear life until that bell sounded and got out of the round. So it was such a good example of why women need the 3-minute rounds. But it was an exciting fight. Both women are skilled. Unfortunately, Reis was a little rusty. She hadn't had a fight in 18 months plus, and it showed. But once she got into her groove, that woman's dangerous. And everyone agreed we'd love to see her again. It did more for her publicity than her entire previous career. Getting that kind of exposure was priceless for her. She was very well liked by the media, most of whom had never met her before. And, there's a possibility there will be a rematch. Both women were asked, would you like to do it again? Both said yes. But Chris Cyborg was sitting there ringside wearing a T-shirt that said Cyborg versus Braekhus 2019. And there was a lot of interest in that fight. And I'm sure there'd be a lot of money in that fight. So we can expect to see that. But Braekhus had indicated to the media a few weeks earlier that she had at least 2 more fights on her schedule before she'd even consider taking on Cyborg. So we'll see what happens.
I know, Erica, you have to leave. One final question before you head off. Gail alluded to the future of Cecilia Braekhus. She mentioned Cyborg. HBO, not so subtly, was also throwing Katie Taylor around, who I believe fought the previous week. I'm going to ask everybody here on the panel, but I'm going to start with you first before you get ready to head off.
Okay.
Where do you see Cecilia Braekhus going? Big fight with Katie Taylor, a fight with Cyborg. I know some others have talked about Clarissa Shields. I don't like that at all. She's just too big and strong for her. Where do you see Cecilia Braekhus going here?
I think, for starters, I love how passionate Gail gets about when it's talking about women boxing. I absolutely love it. I'm here sitting and just taking notes and becoming much more passionate about it as we go along. So shout out to you, Gail.
Thank you very much.
Of course. But I think I do want to play a little bit of devil's advocate to see Cyborg versus Braekhus in 2019. I mean, I think both worlds are colliding. It's inevitable at this point. But I kind of want to see that. It would be pretty cool. But her as a boxer herself, I mean, that record is just stellar. 33-0, 9 knockouts. And at her age, she's still performing. Nah, there's nothing stopping her.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you for joining us. I know it was brief, but I hope to have you on. I hope to have you on again. I will have you on again for sure.
Absolutely.
And before you leave, for folks, I always ask this of our guests, for folks who want to talk the sweet science or anything else with you, let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, for sure, you guys can find me on all social realms under the name Curls and Sports, spelled the normal way, nothing crazy. And I will check you guys out soon. I make sure to tweet it out so like that people can listen in because boxing Twitter gets just as real as NBA Twitter.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good night, ladies.
Good night.
I'll just go around. I'll continue the question for everybody else here. Unmute your mics, please, ladies. Where do you see Cecilia Braekhus going in the future for her? Cyborg, Katie Taylor. Where do you see her going?
I see there being a rematch between Kayleerias and Cecilia Braekhus, simply because I think Katie Taylor is a bit too dangerous of an opponent, and I think that Clarissa Shields is a super dangerous opponent. And I think Cyborg is again a very dangerous opponent. I mean, she's huge, she's intimidating, has a lot of power, and I know it just because of the way she pretty much punched Holly Holm around the octagon like a rag doll. She has tremendous power. So the fact that Cecilia Braekhus, she's here new pretty much to the boxing game in the U.S., I think that it's going to be a rematch between she and Kayleerias.
Miss Fight Lady, your thoughts?
Safe for now. Mm-hmm.
I don't think that she's going to be too excited to want to go and fight her again. That'll be interesting if they do that. It may not turn out to her favor. Also, we can't forget Miss Layla Carter's out there wanting to get some of this work too off the seat. So I'm interested to see if they could pull some things together and get that going. She was talking. She wants that work. So I would it would be surprising to me to see how much she struggled in there for them to want to, do a rematch until she can get herself squared away. She really almost lost a lot more than I think she bargained for on her debut. That hurt a lot. That could have been devastating.
Wrap this up.
I don't know how soon they'd want that, but Layla, I think, has something coming up in June. So I don't know.
Wrap this up for us, Gail.
Yeah, she'll be back. I do think that it was a harder transition to the American fight scene. She complained about the American gloves being different and hard for her to get used to. And we don't really know what happened in her training with Lucia Riker. Clearly, there was some discomfort having her in the corner. And so she called on her old trainer, Jonathan Banks, who she's used to. And he was tied up in another training camp. That's why he wasn't with her through the duration of this camp. And Lucia was standing in. But, sometimes you just don't gel with the trainer. I'm not sure there was anything particularly, outrageous or sensitive going on. It's just, it wasn't working for her. And I don't think that's a criticism, but people are so fascinated by women's fights and, a lot of the other crazy ideas they've got that, there's a lot of mystery around it, I guess. But she'll be back. It was a good outing. I do think there'll be a rematch eventually. I wouldn't mind seeing her fight Cyborg. We'll have another opportunity for a real intersection of the two sports. Maybe we can wipe out that crazy Mayweather-McGregor nonsense with a real competition between two people at the highest levels of combat sports. That's could be as short as 7 or 8 months away. It's not that long.
Let's get into some fights that just happened recently. Start off with Jorge Linares defending his WBA lightweight title against Vasyl Lomachenko, who a lot of people feel is number one pound for pound. I'll go to you, Miss Fight Lady. Here's the thing for me. Linares, he forced Loma to answer some questions, put him down, I think in round 6. But I have to give Loma credit for answering those questions. The body shot that ended the fight was beautiful. I thought he was impressive. Your thoughts on Loma's win as he's moved up to 135 and has become a champion?
Well, I mean, he he did what appeared to be just damn near impossible, and I think a lot of folks who are on the fence about Loma and him being this overnight sensation, I think he answered a lot of questions. For him to do it, and I mean that is just an amazing feat, I know it's inspiring a lot of young kids who really just do not feel that they could accomplish something like that. They're looking at the greats, even of their era, and how long it took for them to be able to pull something off like that. I give props to him. I was on the fence. I'm like, how is he better than Ali? And he had all these great accolades and all these wonderful things being said about him. Sorry, my son's about to talk. But at the same time, I don't think the first thing I got phone calls was that Jorge quit. That was scripted, and I had to watch it a couple of times. That's not the Jorge I know. I really do believe he got caught, and I don't think there's any quit in Jorge. I don't think that. I don't want to be a part of that kind of discussion, that kind of talk. That it was a manufactured and scripted fight for him to win that in front of everybody. I give the total props to Loma, and I wish him well, and I hope he really does stay at his weight and opts not to move up any further.
I'll go to you, Galen Francis. Your thoughts on the fight, as well as the future for Loma. I mean, everybody after the fight, everybody afterwards, the fight they want to see. Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia.
Oh, yeah. And who wouldn't want to see that? Lomachenko is one of a kind. The man is a genius. There isn't anything he doesn't do well. It's just simply amazing watching him. And if you ever have the opportunity to see him in person, do not turn down the opportunity. I can't stress that enough. He faced a true dangerous opponent at his level in Jorge Linares. And what did we all think when we saw him get popped straight on the button and sit down like that? Wow, that was the air going out of the room fast. But what it showed is that he can take a punch.
Yep.
And that he can recover, maintain focus. He immediately shook it off. He was fine. He came out for the next round as if it had never happened. I'm more impressed frequently seeing something like that than I am with a guy who just breezes through a fight. I want to see them come back from a little adversity. I want to see someone tested, bullied maybe a little, take a punch. I want to know, can they stand up to it? Can they take the heat? Oh, yeah, he can take the heat. And for him to put Linares down with a body shot, those of you who listen to the show know there's nothing I love more than a body shot knockout. Nothing in boxing. And that was a stand up out of your seat and make noise. Even if you were watching all by yourself in the living room, you were all doing that. I know you all were. I know you all were. A credit to his father, who is, some kind of boxing Einstein for the way he's trained his son. And I'm not sure that training could translate to anybody else. They're just such a unique set of circumstances with both of them. It fascinates me seeing how he trains both mentally and physically. And it's the mental game that's equally as important for him. But with Lomachenko, it all starts at the feet. It all starts with the feet. And if every young boxer could simply put a little more importance on the footwork, on the balance, on punching up through the feet for power. Lomachenko isn't particularly strong, really, given his size, but his technique is so good he overcomes that. So what's next? Well, boys and girls, Bob Arum has already booked the Forum in Los Angeles on August 25th for Lomachenko. It was already up on the BoxRec schedule before the night was over. Which is very interesting. Now, there's no opponent named. What we all are pretty sure is going to happen is that Lomachenko's going to go after Ray Beltran's WBO belt at lightweight. Frankly, that's fairly easy pickings. He'll easily sell out the Forum. Late August.
Easy work. Easy work.
Easy work. Easy work gets a belt. Suddenly, he's got 2 lightweight titles. Why is that important? Suddenly, he has more leverage against Mikey Garcia and drawing Garcia into a fight. So that's almost like, you know, acquiring another little chew toy to dangle and wiggle in front of the dog to get him to come towards you. So that's what that's about. But it gives everyone in Southern California, or anyone who can fly there, and it's absolutely worth it to get to go see Lomachenko in person. You might not see him for very long, very many rounds in front of Ray. But, you know, I'm fine with that fight. Ray Beltran has earned a payday. He's a good guy. You know, he's straightened up his act. He has a compelling backstory. He is a draw in Southern California and certainly among Mexican and Mexican-American fans. I don't think he'll pull a no Moschenko, so that's good. And, you know, it gives Ray a great way to go out, good exposure, good payday. I like all those elements, and it will help propel Lomachenko toward Garcia.
Your thoughts on the fight, Francis, and so much praise being heaped Lomachenko's way in terms of
I can tell you don't feel the same way.
Number 1 pound for pound. First of all, again, I'm going to give a shout out to Bo from Truth and Facts About Boxing. He's watching the show live. He commented in the live YouTube chat. But back to you, Francis. I give credit for Loma for what he's doing, but am I wrong for not putting him number 1 pound for pound like everybody else is?
No, you are not. You're not. And this is why. Because from my observations of the fight, definitely, I think that Lomachenko, his speed, his agility, his timing, his calculated strategy is what makes him a perfect fighter. But against an opponent like Linares, a more sizable opponent with good timing and a lot of power, I think he can be vulnerable, especially to an opponent like Mikey Garcia, who has a lot of power and great timing. And although Linares and Mikey Garcia aren't as fast as Lomachenko, they do have excellent timing on their punches. And I feel that if they were to land, you know, a big straight right hand or something like that, especially Mikey Garcia, I think it could be lights out for Loma. Do I want to see that happen? No, of course not. To be honest, I'm talking about that right now, and I'm getting nervous as I'm talking about it because I definitely do not want to see that happen. But Loma looked very petite and overpowered by Linares. It was really his speed, his super fast combination punching, his ability to work angles, the way that he spun out that made him really shine in this fight. Linares, if he had thrown the kitchen sink and thrown those combinations, those power shots repeatedly, and really took it to Lomachenko the way we had seen a few times in that fight, I think the fight could have ended much differently. Because it showed to me that Lomachenko, I think this is, I wouldn't advise him to move up any more in weight. I commend him for his performance. He was able to take a shot. He took that straight right hand, you know, like a winner. And I thought he was resilient. And he came back with tenacity. He wasn't shaken by it. And the thing that I loved about his performance was that perfectly placed uppercut, or that body shot that put Linares down to ultimately finish the fight and to close the show. So there were a lot of things that I loved about Lomachenko. There are a lot of things that made me nervous about this performance and about a future fight with Mikey Garcia. I understand what you're saying, Mike. I understand that you don't think that he's, you know, pound for pound best. But I do think that he brings a lot of talent and a lot of tenacity and, you know, such a unique, calculated strategy to the boxing ring that I don't really see in many fighters. So for me, this fight, it made me very excited, but at the same time, very nervous. And I can't wait to see him fight again. So I mean, that's how I feel.
To your point, Francis, the question I was asking throughout the fight, okay, Linares was getting to him with some shots. What if head and body? What if that was Mikey Garcia hitting him with the same kind of shots? How would he react? A. And B, in the aftermath, I'm hearing all this talk and I'm like, how soon folks forget? It's like Bud Crawford just went away. No talk of him in the pound for pound rankings? Teddy Atlas? Anyone?
Well, our problem is that Crawford has moved up to welterweight, at least, on paper. I think we'll have a more serious discussion once we see how he dismantles Jeff Hearn. Is it a complete beatdown? Is it a slaughter? Is it technical? What kind of fight is it? So we're going to be comparing them straight across in a fairly finite period of time. So, Lomachenko should enjoy his perch right now. Doesn't mean that in a couple of weeks it isn't going to change. And it very well could change. Although it is Crawford's first fight at welterweight. But, we're all darn curious to see it. But until that happens, he's sort of on hold.
Yeah, my thing is, even up to this point, Loma hasn't dominated and cleaned out divisions at 26 and 30 the way Bud did at 35 and 40. That's just, you have to put that into equation. But I'm going to move on because some may be listening and accusing me of being a Loma hater. It's not that. I just don't think that he's number one. I just don't think he's number one. Not yet. Not yet.
We're going to have that serious discussion later in June.
Exactly. Let's move on. Again, comments from Bo in the YouTube chat. First of all, he gave a shout out to you. He said, good show. Shout out to y'all. He said, good show, ladies. He agrees. He thinks that Loma's going to fight Beltran. He said that Mikey Garcia is going to fight Robert Easter Jr. and he's going to blast Easter Jr. out of there, in my opinion. Robert Easter has flatlined, even regressed in terms of improvement. Saying that the knowledge is being dropped by the ladies. This is beautiful to listen to. Again, thanks for listening, Bo. I go to you, Miss Fight Lady, starting with you for this next fight. Lomachenko, Linares and Lomachenko, that took place in New York at MSG. Sadam Ali in Verona, New York, fought Jaime Munguia. Here's the question, simple question for you, Miss Fight Lady. Why did Golden Boy set that dude up like that to take that kind of beating? That was rude. That was rude. You saw it. You saw it. As soon as I finally sat down and watched some video of Munguia, as soon as I watched some video of him, you could see this coming a mile away. And once you got in there, and he looked Jarrett Hurd size for a junior middleweight, oh Lord, he blasted Sadam Ali out there, out the water. It wasn't even funny. You kind of felt kind of sorry for Sadam Ali in there. He's a welterweight, and you could see it in there from moment one. First 30 seconds of the bout. It was ugly. It was just ugly. He fished him in 4. He probably could, if he wasn't 21 years old, and a baby in there, he probably could have took him out the first round. Again, why did Golden Boy set Sadam Ali up like that?
I think he's had a hard time of it pretty much, from the start of his career. He's been having a rough go of things. I know there's a lot more to be said about some of the matchmaking strategies that are going on, and a lot more that can be said about Golden Boy in general right now. I know we're going to have to get into that pretty soon, especially with the ship coming from across the pond with Mr. Hearn. But, I have no answers for the decisions that are being made by those at the helm at Golden Boy right now. I think there's just a lot of questionable things that have happened in the past that are coming back to see them now, unfortunately, in the rudest way possible. And I'm hoping that if there's anything they can do to make amends and kind of salvage some of these relationships, we could see some better matchups. I don't think it was personal. I really don't think it was personal. I just think it was one of those, brain fart decisions at the worst time. I mean, you get HBO airtime, regardless of what people want to say about HBO. It's still a force to be reckoned with on any given day, and they need to be proud of the product they put out there. They knew this fight was slated to happen, and people should have been scratching heads and asking questions at that time. I don't think he deserved to go out like that. And I don't know how he's going to recover from something like this. It's not the first time for him, unfortunately, that he's had a bad showing on HBO, of all places. So they need to get to the root of the matter. And that's, probably having some uncomfortable conversations and saying things that, a lot of people aren't going to say with too much confidence publicly. But I'm sure the things that are happening to Golden Boy, they can happen to anyone at any given time if people aren't careful. And I just think there's a lot under the surface. There's way too much bad blood, and people are doing things now that are costing careers. I mean, these are game changers. These are in-game type of things. And Golden Boy's been around for a minute. I give them a lot of respect. From my time growing up, you couldn't say one bad thing about Golden Boy. And he brought a lot of pride to the sport for being a boxer on his own back. And there's some things happening right now that are just truly unfortunate. You make comments, you make statements, you make poor decisions, and you create and generate enemies that will come back to see you. I think that has a lot to do with what's happening with Canelo. I think it has a lot to do with the decisions going forward, and I'm concerned about who it's going to affect in the long term. They got to look at their budget and all these things that they're invested in right now. And if they can continue to grow, and how many hands do they have left to shake? How many people are really, truly with Golden Boy and not against them? It's a predicament you put yourself in. And I'm hoping he can dig himself out. And the stuff that I'm seeing with Ring Magazine alone just this week, that is showing you there's a lot of discord on the home front. And they've got to get that addressed. People at Canelo's level don't get taken out like that. So this was a multi-million-dollar ass whooping in front of everybody. So there's some things that have to get squared away at the executive level before we can start to see some things that make sense, for their entire squad, for their entire stable. I really do believe that.
Miss Fight Lady said it wasn't personal, Francis and Gail. It may have been, it may have not been personal.
I just don't think they can make it. Forgive me for saying it, but I don't think at this point they can strategize that far ahead. They've got some major problems. They've got some serious issues that they're dealing with. And I think right now they're just trying to keep what they've got on the table, get through this year, clear their calendar out, look at what they have left, look at their budget. I'm really hoping they can dig out. And you've got to look internally and turn around and look at the people you're dealing with, and who are these people, and are they with me or are they against me? These are questions that, Oscar's got to ask himself. There's some stuff going on up in there that just doesn't happen in 2018. Hell, it didn't happen back in the day either. Boxing has been known for corruption, but not to get exposed at this level, not when it's costing that much money.
Go to you, Francis and Gail. Miss Fight Lady is using this fight to speak to a larger point about Golden Boy. Talk about the fight itself, and again, I still think that was rude what they did to him. But also piggyback on the larger point that Miss Fight Lady is talking about vis-a-vis Golden Boy, the promotional company.
Well, I will say that I thought that it was an excellent showcase for Jaime Munguia. with those 4 knockdowns.
Let me say that. You right. Go, Fran.
Yeah,
you right.
It was. Yeah, definitely. But I think that Golden Boy knew it was his opportunity to shine, and they put him in there with Sadam Ali, who's maybe, who they maybe see as not the moneymaker that Jaime Munguia could be. And even though Sadam Ali, he got the WBO title from an older Miguel Cotto, I don't feel that they think that Golden Boy thinks that he is as valuable of an asset as Jaime Munguia. He's a young kid. He seemed to tower over Ali. He had a lot of power. You could really see it in the way that he threw those punches, a lot of torque, wide punches. And they knew he was going to be a dangerous opponent for Sadam Ali. I think it was Golden Boy's way of honestly, I don't want to say throwing Sadam Ali away, but I think throwing Sadam Ali away.
Stop right there. Stop right there, Francis. Dude in the chat, I don't know who you are. I'm not going to say your name. Don't come on here and be a troll with that feminism comment. This is not the platform for that. If you sit back and listen, you will actually know that these ladies know their stuff. Act with some decorum, bruh. Act with some decorum. Don't jump on here and make those kind of comments. Proceed.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
I didn't see the comment, but he can go sit down somewhere. But anyway, I do think that this is definitely a setup for Sadam Ali to fail, to be a showcase for Jaime Munguia, to expose his power, to expose his explosiveness, and to make him a new rising and future star of Golden Boy. That is definitely what I think.
Your thoughts, Gil?
So let's everyone remember, Jaime Munguia was tossed aside by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, who did not permit him to be the fill-in opponent for Gennady Golovkin because he was too young, too small, and too inexperienced. Let's just remember that. Triple G dodged the bullet of his life.
Shout out to EJ Boxing Live. Shout out to Now to Boxing. They were saying that was the best move that was made for Jaime Munguia. I was on a post-fight show on his channel. They was basically saying they didn't need to sacrifice him, put him up against GGG like that. That was the best move. That was the smartest move the Vegas Commission ever made because he's going to be a beast at 54.
He's a beast. He's a beast. Now,
Preach.
You know, admittedly, there were a lot of odd things with this fight. First of all, let's remember, Munguia was not the original opponent. Not even close. It was supposed to be Liam Beefy Smith. And 2 weeks before the fight, April 28th, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks before the fight, Smith had to pull out due to a skin infection, illness. Really weird reason to pull out of a fight. So they were scrambling for opponents, and there were several other guys in play, and it just wasn't happening. When Munguia was denied as an opponent for Golovkin, Golden Boy said, well, maybe we should see if he'd be up for this. And they couldn't postpone the fight. I mean, you ask yourself, well, why didn't they just put this fight off? The problem is that Sadam Ali, who is a practicing Muslim, has Ramadan around the corner.
Yeah.
And he was going to be out of commission for several months. This isn't as simple as just postponing for a few weeks. He, like Amir Khan and several other fighters in the game who practice their faith, you know, they have a very tight schedule to work around, and it just wasn't going to happen. Plus, this was supposed to be the night HBO did the replay of the Triple G.
Yeah.
And, you know, there were just a lot of moving parts. So they had to make a fight happen. And we all know, when you finish an assignment at the last minute, you're scrambling, maybe you don't think through things quite that clearly. Munguia's folks say, okay, here it goes. And he looked good, sure, and he looks big and strong, but only 21 years old. With one exception, all his fights have been in Mexico. And if you look at his record and look at his record of opponents, they're all your typical Mexican journeymen who, you know, take a few hours off from whatever their regular day jobs are and go get a fight for a few $100. So it was tough to tell. You know, these guys turn pro when they're very young, 16 in Munguia's case. So here he is with 28 fights at 21 years old. And you just have, you see the eye test and you see how he looks, but you just don't know until they get in the ring. So I'm going to defend Golden Boy here a little bit, that they didn't know for sure what they were getting. He could have, you know, folded like a house of cards. He could have just ended up being a, you know, a pretty boy and a youngster who got a bit of a test from Ali, which would have been good for him at this stage of his career when he was young, if he put up good opposition. But holy cow, not only is he strong as an ox and skilled, I don't think I've ever seen a 21-year-old that calm, that composed, that quietly sure of himself. You know, not the braggadocio, I'm the baddest guy. Tito, right.
Tito.
Exactly. That's who you're looking at. A guy that quietly confident is one scary, I'm going to stop right there. Wow. Yeah, he's got a bright future. As for Golden Boy, you know, they are scrambling. Canelo, for many years, has been Golden Boy's main source of income. And they have been trying to diversify. They're trying to build up other guys to come up behind him and start making Golden Boy some money. But they aren't there yet. It's not happening as fast as they hoped. Then they tried to diversify. They buy Ring Magazine. Anybody remember them starting a radio program and a radio show? Oh, that all imploded too when they had to fire their main on-air personality because of some crap he's pulled on the air, and that's been a big darn mess they've had to clean up. And then Oscar's had his own issues to deal with. We all know Oscar has battled some of his own demons from time to time, right? So they got a lot going on, a lot on their plate. I wish them well. I'd like to see them succeed. I think it is very, very important, especially in the United States, to have a promoter who has the viewpoint of the Mexican, American, Latino fan base. That needs to be represented. You know, and if it's not Oscar, who? Is it going to be Zanfir or Promociones del Pueblo? Or maybe Thompson moving in? I'm not sure. But right now it's all in Oscar's hands. And, you know, I hope with some help and, you know, perhaps some good advice, they get their act together. But yeah, this was a beatdown of epic proportions. Who knew?
Golden Boy gonna find a way to sign Munguia up. He's technically not with Golden Boy, but you watch in the next few months or so. There's gonna be an announcement they're gonna sign this dude. Again, you know, you could see this a mile away. You can see this a mile away. And the way they're talking about this, they got to save face somehow. And what better way to save face than to end up signing this kid?
Well, wouldn't it be tremendous? This is looking way, way down the road. Wouldn't it be tremendous to see the two biggest physically Mexican fighters of their generation face off down the road? And I'm talking Zurdo Ramirez and Munguia.
Yeah, indeed. First of all, I want to thank Scorsese, a.k.a. Low Place, for joining us. You should have joined us earlier, Low. Miss Fight Lady, basically what she said earlier about Golden Boy and Canelo specifically. I could just think back what you've been saying about Golden Boy and Canelo Low. So y'all two are on accord with each other right then and there. I'll just go around the panel here, ladies. Any discussion? You want to have any discussion about the undercard bout with Ray Vargas and Hovannisyan? If so, the floor is yours.
That was one messy fight. That was just a hot mess. Just a hot damn mess.
Man, I was so happy to get I had to go get my throat medicine. I said, Lord, please. They killing me with this.
Yeah,
right
you know, that'd be fun if it was a club fight, but seriously,
I understand. Some of us be fighting like walking pneumonia. Y'all gotta help us out with these undercards. That shit hurt. That was brutal.
You know, the two boys got a payday. God bless. That's all.
Yeah, you know, good for them. And then you know what? We did get a treat with this young guy coming up. So hopefully, it will work out in Golden Boy's favor. Let's hope for that. You know, maybe it won't take them hopefully a couple of months to sign him. You know, he's got potential. He's got the goods. He's more than demonstrated that. So I'm pulling for them.
One final. Go ahead. I think you was going to say something. No. Okay. One final word here. Devon Haney fought Friday on Showbox. Defeated a guy. Mason Menard beat him by decision. Excuse me. Again, I'm just going to open up the floor to you, ladies. Any quick word on the young lightweight prospect, Devon Haney, who got into quite an exchange Saturday night with one Shakur Stevenson. Shakur basically said, went on the Twitter and said, "I'll F you up." They both had a back and forth. Both of them were e-thugging quite a bit on Twitter Saturday night. Interestingly enough, these two sparred each other. Again, shout out to Low Place. He mentioned it on a chat that I was on Saturday night. There's video of these two sparring each other, so there's some history there. Your quick thoughts, lady, on Devon Haney.
So impressive.
He did good. He really did. I wasn't expecting him to, you know, from everything I heard, I didn't expect it to last that long. But I didn't see anything that, you know, would make me count out the naysayers, you know, and say that he was some overhyped, you know, prodigy coming out of the Mayweather camp. I think he really does have the goods. I think Floyd made a wise investment. He's got some work to do, granted, as they all do, but I think he's in good hands. And damn, if he can't sit down on his punches, he's not going to need too much coddling, from what I can see. But they're young kids, and you got to give them a chance to grow up and make mistakes. There's all this, you know, protected my zero kind of stuff going on. And I saw that. I retweeted that right away when Shakur said that. I like to see these guys, you know, go at each other. We didn't have this back in the day. We didn't get to see the fighters speak and talk their trash and get at each other. And it hypes it up. And it makes for interesting down the road type of scenarios, but we just must be mindful, ladies and gentlemen, that we don't write too many checks that our behinds can't cash. Just be careful.
That's for sure. You know, I hope people don't just toss Haney into the pile of, you know, world-class shit talkers out of, you know, Mayweather's group. He really isn't that kind of kid. This is a guy who decided, instead of attempting any amateur fights, you know, he took a page out of his Mexican compatriots handbook. He turned pro at 16 and started fighting in Mexico. Just kind of nuts. And he did quite a few fights down there. He made his American debut. I think they given him some kind of a dispensation, or, you know, Mayweather pulled some strings. He appeared on the Pacquiao-Bradley undercard in April of, 2016. So he's been around, given how young he is. It's kind of surprising. He was 4-0 at that point. He put on a really good performance. I have a long, funny story I'm not going to tell about sitting down front in the arena with, you know, only 400 people in there because it was the undercard and everybody else was off in the bars drinking. And this huge group sits around me, and it turns out it's Haney's manager and his family and everybody from the gym and all his buddies. And, you know, he handled himself really well. After that fight in April 2016, he trots back off to Mexico, notches a whole bunch more fights. And, you know, now we're getting to see him with, you know, for a kid who's 19, here he is 19-0, you know, like a little bit like Ryan Garcia, except he's done a lot of his work against those rough types in Tijuana for the most part, which has been great for him. You know, I hope he doesn't go down that rabbit hole of the trash talk and the braggadocio and all that stuff. You know, I'd really like to see somebody like Badou Jack, who's a mature, calm guy who, when he gets into that stuff, he handles it a lot better. Sit somebody like Devon down and say, you know, once that stuff's out of your mouth and once that stuff's up there and posted online, you can't take it back. You can't take it back. I'd like to see him handle himself with a little more class. And I think he's got it in him. I don't want to see another, you know, Gervonta Davis situation, or God forbid, another Adrian Broner situation.
Did he pop off like that? Because I only saw the tweet from Shakur Stevenson. I didn't see anything from...
He didn't. But, okay, you know, when a guy is doing that stuff to you, it's hard.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Devon came back?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. So, you know, that's okay. At this point of his career, you know, it's the kind of thing you can get behind you. He just can't. He can't be doing that a lot more. But I think he's by far the most promising of the sort of the prospect crowd in Mayweather's gym. By far.
Final word on Devon Haney, Francis.
Oh, I think he looked so impressive. He reminded me of a young Mayweather, actually. I was telling Joe about that. There were so many things that I liked. I knew why you wanted us to watch this fight, because I could just see him being a future star. He had an excellent jab, nice long jab. He used it very effectively. And the way that he worked those angles, just beautiful. The combination punching. Honestly, I thought that Mason Bernard, he really had nothing to give Haney whatsoever. He just looked outclassed. It was as though he was prodding forward like Rocky Balboa, but had no conviction to his punches, really stopped throwing punches after a few rounds, and didn't have any type of offensive strategy whatsoever. So for Devon Haney, for being only 19 years old, he really put on a great show. I was very impressed.
You say Floyd. To me, I saw Roy Jones.
Really? I saw like a young Floyd, like from the when he was in the Olympics. Not so much a later Floyd, but an earlier, like a teenage Floyd more.
There's no doubt he studied Floyd, but there's no doubt he studied Roy as well. Just watch, I believe it was either round 5 or round 6 of that fight. I just saw RJ all day, minus the punching power. He has that kind of athleticism to him, but I agree with Miss Fight Lady. I agree with Miss Fight Lady. He needs to season some more, but he's not far off. Low place in the chat saying that I questioned a lot about Haney, but the kid was getting down. He used to sit down more, his punches a little more, but his movement is no joke. So yeah, I agree with him on that. That's the thing I like about him. He has outstanding footwork, outstanding athleticism. He's a guy who's a boxer, but he happens to be a really good athlete. He could probably, if he really wanted to, he could probably play another sport, participate in another sport. He has that kind of athleticism to him. That's why I say he's Roy Jones-like, because particularly prime Roy Jones, he had world-class athleticism, and I see a little bit of that in the young Devon Haney. Let's move on to some news here. Big news from the business side, as Eddie Hearn announced a $1 billion deal with promotional streaming service DAZN or DAZ. I don't know if it was DAZN. Could be a game changer for the sport. He promised to have basically multiple fights all over the place. I think this is a 8-fight deal or something like that. The thing I do know, Francis, is that I saw the press conference, I saw the announcement, and the first thing that came to my mind is he also announced that he's having business in the U.S. as well. The first thing that came to my mind, Francis, and then you can follow up Miss Fight Lady and Gail. All the promoters here in the U.S., your alarm bells better be ringing because Mr. Hearn, he just stomped his foot down and said he's here and he's here to stay.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. I think I'm really impressed with this $1 billion deal. I really have great expectations for it. And I think that hopefully it will help to promote more viewership of boxing in the U.S., specifically because I looked up the cost of I want to say a membership, but the fee is really minimal. It's only $12 a month. $12 a month, and you get access to 16 fights per year. That's really not bad. And considering that Eddie Hearn is going to try to grow his stable here in the U.S. And try to recruit more talent, I think that's wonderful. He's not charging for pay-per-view fights. You know, boxing, it can be costly to watch. You pay for a pay-per-view fight. You have cable, you have HBO and Showtime. I mean, you can spend hundreds of dollars a month watching fights. Watching fights, seriously. So I think he has a great business plan. It's really boxing meets Netflix. And I like that. I really do like that. And I think he has a good game plan in that the way that he has formulated it should have been the way that the PBC had carried on in their business, and that it's one network, not fights on 80 different networks, consistent time, well promoted. He's obviously great at promoting his fighters. So I think that I think Eddie Hearn's going to do it the right way. I think he's going to do it the right way, the way the PBC should have done it.
Correction, I said 8 fights. It's an 8-year deal.
Yes, an 8-year deal.
Worth $1 billion in rights fees. He promises 16 fights a year, including 12 massive and 4 absolute monsters, according to him. These shows will go along with 16 fights per year. Hearn promotes in the UK via Sky Sports, of course. He also has Sky Box Office. This deal would be part of DAZN's boxing offering in the U.S. with a monthly subscription fee. Not determined, I don't think. I think you said $12. But again, Miss Fight Ladies, if I'm a boxing promoter here in the States, you better step your game up for real. Because as Scorsese said in the chat, E $, E $, Hearn, he called him, he's trying to take over.
I'm not sure he's trying to take over, but I think he's trying to, broaden this. He's increasing the whole size of the pie. I mean, the pie, he's not just taking a big slice. The whole thing has grown bigger. And this is nothing but good for boxing. Nothing but good. And it's the wave of the future. A lot of people like to do the things they've always done in the way they've always done them. And unfortunately, they're never going to change the result. And this is the way, service delivery of all of our entertainment's going. Everything, not just boxing. So how smart of Hearn to look around him and say, those models are working. Why? How can I adopt what's working over there to what I do? How can we leave the models that people are bypassing, the old pay-per-view model, how do we leave that behind? And everyone's going to need to get on board. Or the future is there. They've got to move toward it. And Hearn is in a unique position to do this because let's look at someone like Bob Arum. God bless him. And think about how impressive this is. Bob Arum's 86 years old and has this deal now with ESPN and ESPN Plus, who he's going to be furnishing a lot of programming to, their version of a paid subscription model, and has gotten into streaming in a big way. That is what you've got to do. That is how the next generation of fans wants to see their boxing. How did I watch Loma and Linares the other night? I watched it via the ESPN Plus app on my phone because I was at a social event Saturday night, and here I've got the damn phone in my bag under the table with an earpiece on. I kid you not. And it was the best thing ever. Best thing ever. That's the way to go, folks. And the other thing is that Hearn is one of those guys that knows you've got to spend money to make money. And thankfully, he's willing to make the investment, and look towards the future. And it's a calculated risk, certainly. But he's built up a big enough stable and track history, and bless him. It's a way to go. And what a smart comment. Which one of you made this comment that this is what PBC should have done? Absolutely right. Right on target. Where would they be if they'd done something like this? Lot farther ahead than where they are now.
Your thoughts on this, Miss White Lady?
When I first heard about it, it sat me back. That was just game changing type of information. I was blown away. And it took me a minute to sit down. I spent like the last year with the Golden Gloves and looking at these families, looking at the next, and you see all of the hard work that it takes just to get through a professional fight. But you look at a tournament and what that takes in its entirety. To have someone of Hearn's expertise come in with the rights. I mean, he didn't just buy into, some of these other live streaming companies. He actually has the rights to this. And he's got the cash flow. I think if he were to do it right, it could be the future of boxing in a completely different way. There's people out there that are trying on their own with their own live streaming. They're trying to pay for their doctors. They're trying to cover refs. They're trying to cover venue expenses, trying to make names for themselves on social media. You get something like this, which is really hard. It's really hard to get people within the boxing community to want to make any type of progressive change. It's like change is something we don't like that word for some reason. But in order to stay relevant and in order to reap the benefits that the future has coming, it's not in so much putting butts in seats anymore as much as it is getting hits on social media and getting sponsors to buy and back you. And when you've got talent out there that can make names for themselves in the ring and outside of the ring, this young kid, people are giving him a really hard time. But, Ryan, for example, he's marketable. He's got his own following of people. You're a boxer, number one. If you can get behind and if he can incorporate, let's just say, the heads of our 5 families, so to speak, and get, our big name people together along with everyone in between, and we have a boxing network, our own home, it is expensive. Not just, not because they've decreased the pay-per-views. I'm so thankful that they have. I'm very truly thankful, if you're listening out there, to cut down on the pay-per-views. But it's the little, the $4 here, the $5 here, the $8 here, the $7 here. That stuff is adding up. And when you have boxing fans, we do everything based on what we feel. It's all emotional. I see we're getting flack about females in boxing. And what people really need to understand is that women, we're emotional as it is, but please don't get us involved in sports. We're not just showing up to your fight. We're coming there with our makeup. We have to have our dresses. We're going to eat well. We're going to stay in certain hotels. We're going to have certain cars. We're definitely going to go out and hang out with the girls. For the families, the people at home, where boxing is more of a culture, it's a part of your lifestyle. And we're spending money at home, trust me, at the grocery market, at the liquor store. You've got to have the beverages for the little guys. There's babysitters being, paid. We've got barbecues going on. It's a family affair, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And people really need to look at it like that. Down the road in the future, we're seeing our writers right now losing jobs. We're seeing people in our own industry that are just really having a difficult time. And I think if you do it right, if you're really here to be inclusive, and you can get other people behind you, it shouldn't be a situation where Showtime can't sit there, HBO can't sit there. ESPN, of course, wants ESPN. They want the rights to everything. I think that was like a real downer for me. I love my Top Break app. I love to have that convenience, just pop on an app and have my boxing wherever I'm at. I can't miss a sale. And, you know, we have that convenience to have boxing available to us, but we also need our own home. You know, hockey's got their own home, Major League Baseball, the NBA, you know, tennis, everyone in the NFL, they all have their own home. Boxing doesn't have their own home. And I think if we can do that, not only will we have more dedicated and loyal fans on the long term, but we'll continue to grow our base and satisfy the future, which is instant. We want instant gratification, and we want our boxing when we want it. And, you know, and if I had to click an extra button here or there to pay a little more for a pay-per-view, I wouldn't mind that. I'm not putting that out there saying, okay, you know, every month hit us with one or two, but we will pay for what we pay for. You know, people specifically have issues with certain networks. They won't order their package, but they'll order a la carte for what they want to see. And if we just had one home, if I could get in Eddie Hearn's ear at all, I would really strongly encourage him to sit down with everybody and, you know, get main events on the phone, you know, get Top Break on the phone. You definitely want to have a conversation with the heads over there, with Mr. Espinoza, and get HBO on the line. You know, I think I can only see this as going well depending upon how he does it, you know, how he chooses to do it. The things I've heard him say are going to be a little bit concerning, and there are a lot of people that are going to want to jump ship, but they also have to look at the long-term prospects of that and what that future may look like. I just think it could be a win-win if you do it right. A win-win for boxing and her fans. And mind you, we're worldwide, you know, and when we have our friends in the UK that are, you know, they can't sleep, they're up trying to keep up with us, and we have our own dedicated network. I have a ton of fights all over the place on, thank you, by the way, to the people that are sending me links to fights that I would never be able to see, simply just for, you know, being thoughtful and thinking of other people that, you know, are fanatics like you are. But if we had our own dedicated place where we had our information, which is changing constantly, if you set your notifications to every boxing magazine or article or the people that are in the know, that thing lights up. My phone dies. We would have it going right across the bottom of the screen, you know, who just had an injury, who just signed with so-and-so. I mean, it would create so many opportunities worldwide for people. We wouldn't be worrying about losing some of our major talent, people that are out there that really have a lot to offer, that we're losing. Media's taking a hit, and I think this way we would own it and take it back. You know, social media definitely is the wave of the future, and I think it would be smart to put the right people in the right place and have a mega platform for boxing. I wish him well. I wish him well. And I hope that the other individuals who are maybe nervous can actually embrace the idea and get behind it and get ahead of it before you get left out.
Okay, that was a lot. So in short,
sorry.
It's short. You want going forward, not just success for Hearn, but for him to find a way to bring everybody into the fold, so you have like a whole unified thing.
Absolutely. I mean, wouldn't you want that? I mean, I was feeling some kind of way, you know, towards certain networks at a particular time. I didn't want to give them my time, let alone my money. But, you know, being a boxing, I have to see how it happened. Everybody, we all watch one fight. I think the thing that makes Twitter so fun for us is that we can all sit down and watch one fight, and we can all have a different perspective, even if our guy straight up lost, as to why he lost. And you know, we have to rely on the people who are going to be giving us this information day in and day out. We have two women right here that are in the field that report on this industry. They tell you what they see. And, you know, we've got Box Rec, we have great magazines, but the integrity is being questioned on a couple of them because of, you know, obvious reasons. But we have to rely on someone's accounting of what happened. And, you know, that was one of the things I had concerns about with the amateurs, as far as it not being documented. We have an opportunity now to make sure everything is in one house, and you can always come back and refer to it. It's there. It would belong to us, a worldwide sport, and one place, one-stop shopping instead of all these one-off live streams.
Let's move on to news regarding the World Boxing Super Series. Last week, World Boxing Super Series, who's
another one
having a final at super middleweight and cruiserweight coming up. They announced that plans for a season 2, and part of that season 2 is going to include a tournament at bantamweight as well as junior welterweight. I'll go to you, Gail, on this one. The bantamweight tournament in particular, that really has me intrigued. Going to have current WBA champion Ryan Burnett, IBF champion Manny Rodriguez, who just won the belt a couple of weeks ago. Well, little over a week ago. Made easy work with Paul Butler on the Bellew Hay rematch, that undercard. Also, Zolani Tete, who I've been touting for a while now, he agreed to be a part of this tournament. And here's the kicker. The winner between the upcoming bout between Jamie McDonald and Naoya Inoue, they are going to be a part of this tournament as well. The bantamweight portion. At junior welterweight, you're going to have Kel Relic, who just won the vacant belt. He's going to fight Troy Noski, former champion, IBF version. You're also going to have Baranchik, Regis Prograis, young undefeated Ryan Martin is going to be a part of this tournament as well. Your kind of overall reaction to season 2 of the World Boxing Super Series?
Wow. We thought the current series was pretty darn good.
And let me add, there also could be a tournament rumored for either light heavyweight or heavyweight.
Yeah, you know, I hope that we don't see that right away. Maybe we sit on that for the 3rd round. These two are absolutely spectacular. Really, really well put together. I mean, the first season with super middleweight and cruiserweight have been absolutely terrific. I understand they want to add a 3rd division. I'm not sure I'd really want to do that. I think light heavyweight is probably the most fertile field if they do. But wow, these are both really stacked. I think the bantamweight field is, pardon me, just incredibly impressive. I mean, Tete, we all know what he's got to offer. Burnett's extremely popular, so you get the whole British fight crowd involved who's, you know, just rabid. And Tete certainly has his folks. And hold on, I'm going to cough again. So go on to the next person while I take care of that.
Your thoughts, Francis?
Oh, I'm very excited about the bantamweight division. It's stacked. It's got a lot of great talent there. So, of course, it's going to be exciting. And for the 140-pound division, that's a great opportunity for a lot of up-and-coming stars to build themselves up in that division, especially with Crawford cleaning out that division. So there's so much potential there to create new stars. I'm excited. I'm excited for the tournament, definitely.
A quick word, Miss White Lady?
I'll keep it short. I just want to see it. So I hope that they can find more ways to make it more available. Like I said, you know, we really should have this in the U.S. I'm just putting that out there again.
You know, that if there was any problem with the tournaments, you know, it was certainly not the competition, but the access to the American audience was really limited. And yes, of course, you know, we all think the American, you know, fight audience is at the center of the universe, which, you know, we got a kind of a rude awakening that guess what? You know, we're really not in a lot of cases. If you can get
boxing is a global sport.
It's a global sport. The British audience, Eastern European audience, even the Middle Eastern audience, Russia, they all have access. What do they need us for? But they are going to have to do that, and particularly for the junior welterweight group. If you've got Prograis and Ryan Martin, who are two really phenomenal young American talents, you're going to have to make sure that you don't leave this audience behind. What a great way to put these smaller weight divisions on display with absolutely tremendously skilled guys. And what I'm really loving is all of these guys are extremely entertaining as well. There isn't a bad fight here. Anybody can watch any of these guys in any combination or assortment, and you're going to see a really good, fun fight. And you know how we all are on this show about the lower weight divisions. We love them. So let them at us.
The bantamweights in particular, I'm really loving. It would really be great if Inoue wins and he's a part of that, and we could see a potential Inoue Tete showdown. But I wouldn't be mad.
You're going to have to get some ice packs and cool yourself down if that happens. I'm worried about you.
I wouldn't be if Jay McDonald awards to make it as well. I'm just glad that minus the WBC champion, effed up, not tending to business when it comes to making weight. We don't have a champion there. He's not, from what I understand, he's not going to be there. But outside of that, this is as good as it gets. Almost as good as the cruiserweight tournament going on right now. So I'm super pumped about that. And even junior welterweight, no big names, no big stars, no quote unquote the guy there, but you got some solid guys on the come up. I'm not mad at that either. Let's move on to some fights coming up this weekend.
Here we go.
Main fight, kind of a dual card here on Showtime from two different players. I want to focus first on light heavyweight showdown. Badou Jack moving up to 175 pounds to fight Adonis Stevenson. I believe the fight is in Toronto. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll go to you, Francis. Stevenson, been a champion a long time, 40 years old. One of these guys who's a lightning rod for sure. Fighting a Badou Jack who, in my view, is improving with each and every fight. Dismantled Nathan Cleverly last time out. I'll say it right now. I think Badou Jack is going to win this fight. I think the fact that Stevenson is an older fighter, he's been inactive against a young, fresh, hungry Badou Jack. If he can survive the early rounds against Stevenson, I think he will win a decision or late round stoppage. Your thoughts, Francis?
I definitely agree with that. I feel that Stevenson, he is obviously an older fighter, and he really didn't face the level of opposition that we hoped that he would in his career. I mean, he only fought once last year and then just once in 2016. So I feel that he really hasn't faced the best opposition or opposition that he could have faced, where I feel like Badou Jack, he's faced a lot of very notable opponents, and he only seems to improve with each fight. And while Stevenson, he's highly regarded for his explosiveness and power. I mean, Badou Jack, he's wonderful technically. He throws a lot of combinations. Once he gets inside, he can really explode too. So I would definitely not underestimate Badou Jack. And even though Stevenson, he has notable power and such, I think he's definitely beatable, especially at this stage of his career.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Miss Fight Lady, Gail, your thoughts on this fight?
Me personally, I'm definitely I'm ready for Adonis to kind of figure out what he wants to do. I'm pulling for Jack all the way. It's time. It's just time. We need to move on from this name right here. Badou needs to go in there and handle his business so we can keep on moving. I don't know what Adonis wants to do. I'm not sure if boxing is it.
Your breakdown, Gail.
Oh, moving on. Could you put that any better? Absolutely right. We are so done with this man. I think there is a changing of the guard in order, and let's hope it happens. And what a good reward for Badou Jack's diligence and hanging in there and taking the fights and doing everything that's required. He's earned it. He really has earned it. He is going into the Lion's Den. You're right, Michael. It is in Toronto. Canadian fans are very passionate about their guys, but those of us all here sort of south of the border would love to see Jack just take him to school and take him out. And I do think it's going to open up that light heavyweight division with Adonis, putting that death grip on that belt he's got. He's holding on to that lineal championship, and him being so inactive and so difficult to make fights with has really stunted in a lot of ways the whole division, which is really a shame. If he loses, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And when I say he, if Stevenson loses and suffers, what will be his first loss, maybe he'll loosen up a little bit and throw some caution to the wind. I take that back. He's got one loss way, way back in his career. Pardon me. His one loss is to Darnell Boone, but this is 8 years ago, right?
He made sure to post that knockout on his IG recently. So
there you go. Very good. But maybe at that point he'll start, taking some fights that he should have taken, a long time ago. To get back in, or because he needs the paycheck or whatever. And then we'll see, unfortunately, some of the fights that are a little overcooked, but that we'd all love to see. They both, it's not the fight they could have had several years ago, but don't we all want to see Kovalev and Stevenson go at it? Hell yes, we do. At least
that fight will not happen. That fight will not happen if he loses. No way.
If he loses, well, it won't happen if he wins, that's for sure. I do think that he'd be more willing to take it and reclaim his glory if he loses. I do. Kovalev's just announced, as many of you know, that he's got a fight against Eliader Alvarez August 4th in Atlantic City, which is so interesting. That's something we'll have to talk about.
I hear Scorsese screaming somewhere.
Well, the fight's scheduled for the brand new Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. And I'm thinking, where the hell is that? It's the old Trump Taj Mahal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just funny enough as it is. Now, Kovalev also said
from Russia fighting in a place.
Jack. So,
yeah, fighter from Russia fighting in the old Trump Taj Mahal. Yeah.
Isn't that hilarious? Oh my God, I can't even. It's going to open in about a month or two, and this will be the first fight in that new venue a couple of weeks later. It's really interesting. In any event, Kovalev has said he'd face Jack, no problem. We know Dmitry Bivol would face any of them. So I hope that Stevenson loses and we end up with that light heavyweight tournament in the Super Series, putting all these guys together. If they all agree to participate, then they don't get a say in whether they face someone or not. It's, if you win, you move on, and there's your guy. And that would be the way to get all of these guys engaged and mixing it up with each other. And there's enough talent now in that division. It would be so interesting. So here's the question I want to put out to everybody else. Let's say Stevenson loses, and then we decide to do the Super Series light heavyweight tournament. Is Stevenson in the tournament or not?
You have no choice.
Well,
he wouldn't have to build his leverage anymore.
He doesn't. So do they invite him, A, and B, does he say yes?
If they invite him, he would say yes.
Yeah.
If they invite him, he'd say yeah.
Yeah. So if he wins, do they invite him and he says yes?
They probably invite him, but he may find a way to not go.
I think if he wins and they invite him, he's no. He says no, or he makes just such outrageous demands. They just say, pound sand, forget it. We'll do it without you.
So yeah.
I think Jack needs to go in there and handle his business, and I think just for just for shits and giggles, I would love for Kova and Adonis to just sit down and actually address this. You know, they have to have that conversation. That would be something that would, you know, that would be one thing I would like to see him actually do before he actually goes off and, you know, does something else. That's a fight that I would like to see take place.
I'm
for
skeptical.
all the crap that we have been through with these two. It would be nice to actually see them actually glove up.
I'm skeptical because they had their chance and it didn't happen, and it was everybody's fault. Stevenson,
Yeah, but now we're
Michelle,
here in the end,
Kathy Duva, it was all their fault.
You know, though, Duva and Yvonne Michelle, who's Stevenson's promoter, they put together the Alvarez fight. And if that goes well, and they've worked together well, and so far so good, you know, I see it. I see it being possible finally. And yeah, it's just, you know, it's a very different fight than it would have been a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But it's still a fight I'd like to see, you know. And Kovalev's still mad, you know.
Oh yeah, a lot of people are still pissed. That's why I think it's a conversation that we need to actually let them resolve. You know.
Yeah, I agree. You know,
has to happen.
For the mental health of both of them, I think they need the fight. I think you're right. Just for their overall emotional healing.
Yeah, I think it just a lot of people are still pissed about it. You know, the monkey T-shirt, all the oh my gosh.
Well, and Kovalev still calls him Chickenson.
Yeah,
you know?
He said something the other day, popped up, and I said, "Damn, Kova ain't letting it go." So
he
absolutely
will not let it go.
Yeah, he's not gonna let that go. I hope that with all that we've seen happen in boxing and all the things that we know can be done, this is something that they've got to let us see. You know, just for shits and giggles. And we've seen some crazy stuff on a Friday, Saturday night on Showtime and HBO. They can at least let us have this one.
I agree.
They can let us have this one.
I agree.
This fight is, like I said, this is a part of a Showtime doubleheader. Stevenson is going to happen in Toronto. Second part of this is going to be happening in Oxon Hill, I believe, at the little casino or arena there. As Gary Russell, known for fighting only once a year, well, he's going to get this one fight a year. Going to fight his mandatory Jojo Diaz. Russell defending his WBC belt at 126 pounds. Go back to you, Gail. Your thoughts on this fight?
Jojo's a very solid performer. He isn't really the crowd-pleasing star that Canelo is, but he is a solid performer in the Golden Boy stable. He's a very pleasant guy. He's fan-friendly. He does all the right things. He works very hard. He's not particularly flashy, and he doesn't particularly have, big knockout power. But I think he'll take care of business. It's a bit of a changing of the guard fight. For some reason, I just don't see Russell being able to handle Diaz, and we'll see what happens. I like the fact, too, that Diaz has been willing to go, into Russell's territory there in the greater Washington, D.C. area. That's a nice little MGM property at National Harbor. So that's a nice little fight, and I like seeing fights outside the big, big venues. Any good fight that fans can access somewhere other than New York, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles is good for boxing.
Your thoughts, Francis, on this fight? Going back to something Miss Fight Lady's reaction to Sadam Ali and Munguia and bringing up the issue of Golden Boy. One thing I know for sure, try to tie that into this. This is a fight that Golden Boy needs. They need Jojo Diaz to win this fight, given what Miss Fight Lady was mentioning before. So, your thoughts on this fight with Diaz and Russell, given that backdrop?
I think this is going to be a very tough fight for Jojo Diaz. Just from the tape that I've reviewed, I feel that Gary Russell Jr., he's way too defensive, too fast, and has great distance control. Whereas I feel that Jojo Diaz, he really just steps forward with his punches, and he throws a lot of combinations, but I don't feel like he has the defensiveness and the accuracy behind his punches the way that Gary Russell Jr. does. I agree, and that Golden Boy definitely wants Jojo Diaz to put on a great performance, to defeat Gary Russell Jr., and to please fans, obviously, and the audiences. But I see this being a very tough fight for Jojo Diaz, but I also see it being very great competition for Gary Russell Jr., a good test for him, considering he only fights once a year. So I'm not sure if Golden Boy, if they're very confident that Jojo Diaz is going to win this fight, given that you want me to discuss the backdrop that we were discussing earlier.
It's just for me. Excuse me for interrupting.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me for interrupting, but
go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
if Golden Boy really thought, I know they need for him to win, but if they really thought of him as kind of a cash cow, why would they let him go to Russell's home turf instead of putting up the money to bring Russell closer to Diaz home turf for this fight?
Right. That's why I find it to be so questionable. They want him to win, but the fight's not going to be in Diaz's hometown. It's not going to be in his backyard. To me, it doesn't really make any sense, because I really do see this being a very tough fight for Diaz. I do. I
think this is a neat follow-up tie-in to our earlier discussion about Golden Boy's struggles right now. Golden Boy has the LA, Southern California audience in its hip pocket. They can stage a fight with the local guys. Everyone shows up. Everyone has a great time. It's all good. But they have to broaden their base beyond that. They have to look beyond the day when Canelo's no longer there. And they've got to develop fighters that have more of a fan base than just Los Angeles and South. So I see this as part of their outreach to see, can they develop a fan base on the East Coast with some of their guys? And JoJo's a good one to do it. I guarantee you, if there are fan events or personal appearances or media interviews, he's agreeable. He does everything asked of him. He's really pleasant. He's even done a little play-by-play on some of their streaming broadcasts, and he's quite good. So this does make sense to me from a business standpoint. Now, they're all going to be, thinking in 2020 hindsight, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea if he loses. But, at this point, Golden Boy, I think, is in so much trouble, they don't have anything to lose.
I don't even think it'll be bad. I don't even think it'll be bad for JoJo if he loses the fight. I really don't. I don't see him. I know he's been prone to take some punishment. He'll stand toe to toe, and that concerns me for him, because he will take on some unnecessary punches. He doesn't move around as good as he should, but he's also very good. You can sit back and when you listen to him, commentate on other fighters and what they're doing wrong, he can sit there and he's a boxer. I know he's doing his homework on Gary Russell Jr. I don't think he's over there thinking this is going to be a cakewalk for him either. They're both southpaws. And, I know Gary had a pretty impressive win not too long ago. It's not like he's, been completely inactive. I agree with Fran on this one. It's going to be a tough fight for JoJo. I really do. Whether he was fighting him in my backyard or his, regardless, this is going to be a good test for him, but it'll be a good test for Golden Boy overall, because the tone that we have going on in boxing right now with all the young fighters trying to, have their protecting their zeros and, the attitudes and their personas that they're putting out there and hurting their own marketability. JoJo Diaz doesn't have that problem. he will continue to have his fans and he will represent well regardless. And I think if he does end up suffering a loss, or he does get himself in a very serious dogfight, which I think is what we may see here for him, it'll be something that will elevate his game. I just think for him, it'll just elevate his game and give him more experience. He needs to get in there against somebody who's got heavy hitting. But JoJo's known for his body punching, power and ability, but he also takes on a lot of punches, and it scares me every time he dips down and he has his left exposed. That part has always scared me about him. So he's got to get in there against somebody who can throw. And if he can dispatch Gary Russell Jr., good for Golden Boy, good move. And it shows that he was actually brave enough to step into his backyard. That's speaking volumes for Golden Boy in a positive way. So I don't see this as a bad thing. I would hate to see JoJo lose. I'm a Diaz fan, but I could see it as a positive. He's not one of those cocky ones. He's not out there with that arrogant attitude. That's not Joseph Diaz. So I think that helps Golden Boy actually.
I'm going with Russell in this fight.
I know you are. I know.
I think he's too fast, and I just think that Diaz hits too much for me. So I'm going with Gary Russell to win by decision. One more story. Kind of surprise topic here. Supreme Court decided to.
Whoa! What?
Yeah, Supreme Court.
We're talking about legal stuff. Let me mute myself. Hold on, I cannot testify. I don't know nothing. Hold on.
No. Supreme Court decided today to strike down a federal law prohibiting sports gambling. We know boxing is a hotbed for the sport, particularly because of the betting. Jersey used to be the same way. I'll just ask the question for anybody who wants to respond. How do you think this will affect the sweet science? Basically, sports gambling being opened up here, as a result of this decision. How do you think this will have an effect on boxing? Anybody who wants to tackle that, please do.
I hope we see some structure put into place, long before this stuff becomes rampant. Some guidelines for those directly involved in the sport, so there isn't a whole lot of game playing, shenanigans, throwing fights, all kinds of.
What are they trying to do? Break that down again. I'm sorry. What, Gail? Yeah. Forgive me. What?
Well, if you've got betting going on boxing, if you have any concerns about other sports, people taking a dive and point shaving and stuff being thrown, I would certainly not want to see any of that creep into boxing. We have enough issues as it is. On the positive side, this is just kind of it's interesting that gambling is so regulated in the United States. And while we're not quite as gambling crazy as our friends in the UK are, every time we get one of our panelists from Great Britain on, suddenly we're talking about betting odds for fights and how they.
Yeah, Gus is known for laying down a better too. Let me give Ms.
Gus is, EJ Boxing Live. EJ talks odds like crazy. He's still bragging about betting on Tyson Fury. And
yeah, let me give Ms. Fight Lady an update. She was asking what's going on. Supreme Court struck down a federal law that prohibited sports gambling Monday. So basically, what they did, they gave states the go ahead to legalize betting on sports. They struck down
all sports.
All sports. They struck down the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, a law that was placed in 1992, I believe, that barred state authorized sports gambling with a few exceptions. So. It made Nevada the only state where a person could wager as a result of a single game. But what the Supreme Court basically did, it basically opened up the doors for legalized betting on all sports. Anyway,
well, let me just say real quick that personally impacted me. I'm sorry, let me get my son outside. you know, being in one of those states that's barred. And, you know, I follow the rules. So I have no idea what they're talking about because life's been great. So, you know, that's wonderful. Amen. Amen. Because I don't do anything that I'm not supposed to be doing. So there. I just think, you know, I'm gonna have to get off this topic, but I think it's great. We can continue life as we know it, and have a good time. I mean, boxing, especially in the the amateur division, and when you're dealing with prospects, it is one of the hottest sports ever. And if you're not in that aspect of it, if you're not looking at boxing through that lens, I can see why a lot of people aren't so excited about every fight that's happening everywhere, because they're not, as invested as other people may be. But, they try to take away our ability to be able to, find other ways to engage in this sport. And I think that was wrong. So I think this is awesome. Awesome news. So we don't have to have, yeah, and I'm gonna shut up right there. That's it. IRS, love you back. So, it's about daggone time. It's about, because really you have to get a little creative. And now we can get out there and have more discussions and be involved in things. So more power to boxing. But I think you're right. We definitely, they better get with the program instead of trying to doing things backwards, with their regulations. Interesting. Thank you for letting me know. I had no idea, but I wasn't gambling this whole time or anything. United States. That wasn't me.
Yeah, I definitely was. So I just wanted to say that I have a Bovada account and I use it often. And I am very happy. I'm very happy with the outcome of that ruling. And I will say that from a gambler's perspective, not an addictive gambler's perspective or anything.
No, not at all.
That when you bet on a fight, I feel that you're more emotionally invested in it. I will say that if we're preparing for a podcast and I bet on a specific fight, my eyes are glued to the screen. I know what happens. I've got money on the line and I want somebody to win. So I'm happy to say that online betting is still on and rock on. And that is all.
And that is all. I have nothing more.
And I think we're going to shut the show down on that interesting note from Francis. Going to go around the panel here again. I want to thank Bo Scorsese for joining and commenting here in the live chat on YouTube. I want to thank Erica Fernandez for joining us on the show earlier. If you want to talk boxing or anything else with her, let me get her information up. I think you can check her out on Twitter. Sports and Curls. Yeah, Curls and Sports. Excuse me. You can check her out. Curls and Sports. Twitter, IG, I believe Facebook as well. I'm going to go around the panel here. Start with you, Gail, for folks who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk small business information, for those who want to talk Game of Thrones, Dancing with the Stars. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Now, when are we going to get a Dancing with the Stars boxing competitor who's decent, doesn't suck?
Well, you had Floyd, so.
Well, we've had Victor Ortiz, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Floyd was on the show way back. Floyd. Yeah, and none of them did too well. What can I say? You can find me regularly on Communities Digital News. That's where my regular column runs. It's COMM Digi, DIGI News, comdiginews.com. And Michael, this is one of the only shows where you can't say ladies first in the close.
I'll go to you, Francis, from Full Boxing News. The first, not only boxing outlet who did a profile of yours truly. She did that a couple of years ago. For those who want to talk boxing or anything else with you, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, you can check me out at 4boxingnews.com. That's the number 4boxingnews.com, or on Twitter at 4boxingnews. I also make some guest appearances on a sports show here in Chicago called the Rewind Sports 60 to talk boxing and the UFC, which is also very fun.
Miss Fight Lady, for those who want to talk boxing, especially amateur boxing, with you, let the people know where they can find you.
Well, I am really, really trying to make my appearances on Twitter as often as I can, but that should be the only place where you can spot me nowadays. So it's just MS Fight Lady on Twitter. And I just want to let you guys know that I've been gone a very long time, and I want to tell you thank you so much for welcoming me back. I've missed you so much. This is another reason why I love boxing, and thanks for reminding me of that, and especially to the folks out there tuning in.
No problem. As I said, for those who want to follow me and check me out, talking the sweet science, talking music, talking fitness or whatever, you can check me out on Twitter at BrotherJR76, as I said to begin the show. If you want to find information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report .wordpress.com. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Stevenson, Jack. We will do a recap of Gary Russell, Jojo Diaz. We may also talk Lee Selby, Josh Warrington. We didn't talk about it here, but we may do some recap of that next week. Selby defending his IBF featherweight strap against number one contender Warrington. Bad blood matchup over there in the UK. And we will do we may do recap of a junior flyweight bout between Ryoichi Taguchi and Heke Butler. I may have to invite the homie Nauta from Nauta TV to talk about that fight. He follows the smaller weight fighters. We will also do a preview of a bout we mentioned earlier. Jamie McDonald going to Japan, going to Tokyo to fight Naoya Inoue. That bout, we also will do a preview of really good junior bantamweight German Kanyes fighting Jonas Sultan. Kalia Fai is fighting on the undercard of that bout. From what I hear, is going to be a unification bout should either guy win between Ancajas and Yafai. So we will do a preview of those bouts. So again, shout out to Bo. Shout out to Scorsese, aka My Low Place, for joining us in the chat. Shout out to Erica Fernandez of Black Sports Online for joining us early in the show. I want to thank her. I want to thank Gail. I want to thank Francis from Four Boxing. I want to thank Miss Fight Lady. Episode 208, Ladies Love Boxing Round 4. I am your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Ladies love boxing.
Yes, we do.
Indeed.